Welcome to Uncle's Channel. Thanks for watching today. Let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy Color game. And today, focusing on a game called Mega Man Xtreme for the Game Boy Color. And I had never played this particular Mega Man game before. However, when I was going through it, it felt like I had played it before because it's going to be based on Mega Man X and Mega Man X2. And they're sort of mixing those two games together to make Mega Man Xtreme. And I had never played X2 before, but I did have Mega Man X on the PC growing up. And it was actually fairly hard to play on the PC, but I did enjoy the game nonetheless. But let's go ahead and dive into and see if Mega Man Xtreme holds up the Mega Man legacy. And I almost forgot to mention, this video did get moved up in the queue a good bit because Sega Kid J requested on one of my earlier videos that I cover Mega Man Xtreme sooner than later. So naturally, we moved it up in the queue. If there's a game you would like to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of that game in the comments down below. And just like Mega Man Xtreme, I will also move it up as well. But let's go ahead and get back into Mega Man Xtreme. Now, I always like to start the videos up by looking at the box art for the game first. And the box art for Mega Man Xtreme here sums the game up pretty well. Because you have, of course, X or Mega Man X right there in the front center. You have Zane off to the far left in sort of the background. Gamil, if I'm saying his name correctly, behind him. And those are your two main enemies or antagonists in the game. Then you have Zero behind you, as well as Techno and MIDI. And all of them are sort of background characters. Which, you know, fits well since they're in the background here. But the box art itself is not necessarily my favorite because I like the ones of, at least for the Mega Man games anyway, they give you a preview of like the landscape you're going to go through, or a lot of the robot masters or mavericks you're going to fight against. And this one here just sort of shows the overarching enemies, sort of your sidekicks, and it's very character focused. And I guess to some degree the game itself is very character focused because there's a lot of story in this game. But I don't know. This box art here just does not pull me in. Now, when you start to get up here, you are going to get a lot of exposition as far as like the background story for Mega Man X. And when I say a lot, it's like a literal 5-minute cutscene at the start of this Game Boy game. And man, it's not like a really action-oriented or, you know, like a lot of sprites happening. It's very much of simply a here's a picture, here's some text, here's another picture, here's some text. It's actually a pretty dry, especially considering it's like 5 minutes long here. But it tells the story of Mega Man X, how he was basically created by Dr. Kane in order to fight against these Mavericks, who are these Reploids, who essentially have gone, you know, insane, or these friendly robots that went bad. And his job is simply to continue to eliminate them over and over, and how Zero is his helper here as well. And I think it's like the basic story of Mega Man X, even though I've not played like all of the Mega Man X games. I've only played X1. But his early bit of plot is very well summed up as Mega Man's a good robot, there were other good robots who turned bad, and now Mega Man's going to fight against those robots that turned bad to try to restore peace to the world. Simple as that. Now, when you begin the game, you get one more little cutscene here of Mega Man deep in thought, and I don't know, he looks very human-like in his face here. Sort of creeps me out a little bit. But then you jump into the actual world here, and you're going to notice, like, this looks exactly like Mega Man X, because it's the very first level in Mega Man X that you're playing through here again. And the game is very self-aware. It says, like, this looks really familiar. And it's trying to let you know that, for some reason, there's a story element of why Mega Man's going back into the past to fight through all of these levels again. And so, I don't know, that's sort of neat in its own right, but at the same time, you are just simply playing a rehash of the X games. And all the main core robots are here. You got the B robots, you got like the claw robots, you got the little platforms that sort of blow up and you fall down, just like in the first level. I mean, this is definitely Mega Man X on the Game Boy Color. And I think the graphics actually hold up pretty well. I mean, obviously they don't look as good as the Super Nintendo, but the background looks really well. I think the sprites all look really well. I think, you know, X himself, even though it doesn't look like, you know, exactly like Mega Man, the Super Nintendo games, I feel like it looks pretty darn good for the Game Boy. And so I think the graphics are really well, and I think they transferred it over from the Super Nintendo to the Game Boy the best that they could. The music in the background, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's the same. It's been so long since I played Mega Man X, though. I could be wrong in that. The music, no music in this game like really stands out. It's all just like pretty good music, and nothing's like super great. Now, I will acknowledge one flaw in the game, or I think it's more of a flaw in like the hardware that I'm using. And a lot of times my shots don't show up, so like when I shoot out, it's going to look like there's nothing coming out of my Mega Buster here. But I think that's just simply a flaw in like how I'm playing this game instead of the game itself, because I tried to look online, like no one else seemed to have that issue at all. And so sometimes my game footage here, you're going to look like I'm not like shooting, but I actually am shooting inside the game. But as you continue on, you do eventually get to a robot master, or a robot here that you're going to fight against, named Vava. And Vava is sort of like a mech suit. And when you take Vava out, then you've completed the very first level and you're transported back to home base. And we're going to get several more minutes of story, but it basically boils down to the computer system itself that houses, I guess, like the Mega Man overarching world. It somehow got corrupted or hacked into, and all the old Mavericks or robot bosses you defeated in the past, like, you know, X1 and X2 games, somehow they're coming back to life, and they're going to, you know, cause chaos in the main world if you do not travel into the computer and defeat them at their core data level. And so essentially your little helper here, and his name is MIDI, who's a computer genius, looks sort of like a green Mega Man to a degree, sort of dorky looking, but at the same time, he's going to send you into the computer system to defeat all these robot masters of the past in order to, I guess, save the world here. And that sort of adds like an extra story element of like self-aware of like why you're fighting these enemies that you've already fought in other games, instead of just simply making it a rehash of those games or like a smaller remake of them. And so it's I don't know, it's a clever way of doing it, because that way you're not just simply rehashing the former Super Nintendo games, but at the same time, like, the story is sort of convoluted and a little bit confusing, and it's just not a great story, or I feel like they could have simplified it a whole lot more to make it a little more streamlined and more accessible to a degree. But regardless, we have 4 robot masters or mavericks that we have to fight through, and then we can journey into the core of the computer system and try to figure out who's behind all of this mischief or chaos to begin with. Now, as you look at the 4 stages you can choose from, I'm a little disappointed I don't give you like more detail of like, which maverick it's going to be, or which level it's going to be. Yeah, I know they give you like a little sliver of a picture, but if you're not like really familiar with the X1, X2 games, you may not really know who you're choosing. At least from the image anyway. But I end up choosing Chill Penguin just by chance here. And he was from Mega Man X, so I'm a little aware of this boss. And the level itself, for the Game Boy, a really good looking level. You got like a snow or ice scene in the background. You got lumberjacks who are, at least for me, a winter aesthetic to a degree. You have the robots throwing snowballs at you. You got ostriches, which I guess has nothing to do with winter, but the color of the ostriches makes you think it's winter a little bit. You got the bats in here, and I know the bats from Mega Man 1 were a part of the Iceman stage. And so, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here that just sort of feels like a winter aesthetic to me. And overall, it's a good level. It's really, really short. The only part of the level that like doesn't make a whole lot of sense is when Mega Man gets into this like mech suit, and he travels for like, I don't know, 15 seconds, and then you have to get back out of the mech suit. And it's like, what was the point of the mech suit except just to show off that there's a mech suit in the game here? But regardless, when you get to Chill Penguin, I look at the HP bar, and my lord, like his HP bar is like double what mine is. And my shots are doing like pretty much no damage at all against him. And I was like, all right, so maybe he wasn't the first one I was supposed to go against. I probably need to go through a different level, get a special weapon or a special power up in order to be able to take him out a little bit faster. So then I go back to the main menu here. As I look at the main menu, I notice there's one that definitely looks more of a flame boss. And I end up picking him. He's called Flame Stag, which I guess he's sort of the opposite of a reindeer. He's more of a fire deer to a degree. But anyway, I figured he's got the firepower, which I could use against the Chill Penguin. So I'm going to go through his stage first. Now, his stage is also a pretty cool looking stage, even though it's going to be really, really short once again. And the stage itself is not difficult. It's got very much of a volcano aesthetic here. You got helicopters that can sort of crash into the side, which open up like different corridors and whatnot. You have these little flying squirrels and these little drill rodents as well, sort of drilling through the background. You got one part where the volcano lava is like literally rising up. It's a cool stage. It fits with the theme really well. But once again, like, it's really darn short. And when you finally get to Flame Stag, my gosh, he's going to be a very easy boss. And I don't know if he was the first one I was supposed to fight or not, but he's very easy to telegraph, get your shots in, and it's just a really easy boss fight. Now, when you defeat him, you do get his flame move, which is called the Speed Burner, and I assume it's going to be excellent to take back to the Chill Penguin. So I head back to the Chill Penguin level, but when I get there, I realize in the options, there's an opportunity for you to turn on Rapid Fire, and I don't know if there's like, something that you're not supposed to turn on or whatnot, but you have the opportunity inside the options here, turn on Rapid Fire, and holy cow, your Mega Buster can just simply constantly fire out bullets. And to me, when I get back to the Chill Penguin, it's actually easier for me just simply to do the Rapid Fire than to actually try to use the Speed Burner. And so I use the Rapid Fire, figure out the Chill Penguin's moveset, and Chill Penguin doesn't stand a chance. But now that I'm taking out some of the Robot Masters, defeating some of the levels, naturally we get another cutscene here, and we get Midi, who's our little green helper, whose program is into the computer here. We get his twin brother, who is Techno, who's a pink version of Midi, and he's fighting for the opposite side, and he's saying like, hey, we should not be able to destroy these Robot Masters as data so fast. And then two characters named Zane and Gamil, who both appear, and they say, hey, we'll take Mega Man out, don't you worry. And so it's sort of a foreshadowing of more of a important or overarching antagonist that we're going to fight later. But then we get back to our menu select here, and the next stage I'm going to choose is Spark Mandrills, and he reminds me a lot of Sparkman from Mega Man 3, both the level aesthetic as well as the boss himself. And the boss actually also reminds me a lot of a character from Liza P. And it could just be simply because I've just got done playing that game. But the sideburns and the overarching body style, I don't know, it reminds me a lot of this particular puppet. I'll put a little video of that puppet down here in the corner as well for you to make your own comparisons. But the stage itself is probably the most boring of the stages we've gone through thus far. Has some of the main enemies from Mega Man X. You got these rocket launching mechs that shoot rockets at you. I remember those from the original game. You also have more of the drill rodents here. You also have these turtle cannon enemies, which are pretty cool looking. Don't really fit the theme of the stage, but still a cool looking enemy. And you also get a mini boss in this particular level, and it looks like Crane the Brain, because I mean, at least to me anyway, he's shooting out, little, I guess like spit or tears at you, and you can get stuck in the mucus, and he comes down and tries to, smash down on you. He's not too bad, but it's at least an interesting mini boss, the first one that we've actually had inside the game. And eventually I do get to Spark Mandrill himself, and the boss fight, if you just simply use rapid fire, is a very difficult fight for the first time. But if I use the freeze moves that I've gotten, it like literally freezes him in place. And man, like super, super easy. And so this is one where I actually chose to use the weakness of the boss in order to defeat him. And after he's gone, I do get the electric spark move. And at this point, I do realize the after boss little cutscene here, where you get to, display what move you've gotten, is way, way more lame compared like to the other Mega Man games I played on the Game Boy. They always had like little cutscenes to display the move, or like a little animated scene to go with it. This one is just sort of, I don't know, sort of lame. And it really feels like there's a lot of things in this game that Mega Man 5 for the Game Boy was like really at the peak of Game Boy Mega Man. And this game here sort of feels like they're sort of phoning in some of the aspects of this game. A lot of the flash is just simply not there. But then I go to the final of the 4 stages here, which is going to be Storm Eagles, and his is at an airport, and it very much has the the air aesthetic here. You got little air cannons, you got little platforms you hop on, little grabby things that try to pick you up and sort of drop you off in a hole. The level itself, I mean, it sounds hard because you're fighting up in the air, but truth be told, it's probably the easiest level thus far, and it's also a really short level once again. Now, when you get to Storm Eagle himself, like, this is one of the cooler boss fights in the game, because instead of like in a little corridor, you're more like out in the open, and Storm Eagle is going to essentially try to blow you off the little ship here, and that's his main move. And so if you just simply keep dodging or dashing towards Storm Eagle and keep your rapid fire on him, you'll have him defeated pretty darn quickly. He does mix it up a little bit, trying to do like little dives from the sky at you. He can throw out little eggs or sort of hatch into smaller birds to try to attack you. But it's a fun boss fight. It mixes up a little bit, but it's probably also the easiest one of the 4. But at this point, I finished up all the main stages. I'm teleported back to home base. I tell Dr. Kane I'm ready to go into the core to figure out who's behind all this chaos, set the world back to being straight again. But I do come to the conclusion, or I do realize that there's a power-ups in each one of these levels that I didn't actually get. And so I only have one of the 4 power-ups, which is like a leg power-up, which allows me to essentially jump further or, bash off walls a little bit. And so I only have one of the 4 power-ups. And so I look at the menu here, and you can see I only have the leg power-up. And so I realized I need to go back in all the other levels except for the ice one, and I need to find Dr. Light in those levels in order for him to give me these power-ups. And when you find him, there's these little blue teleporters you approach. He talks to you, tells you what the power-up's going to be. You get into the little teleporter, you get the power-up. And so I go back into all 3 of the levels that I have not found a power-up at, and I go through that, and I find one for like a more powerful like headbutt or helmet. I find another power-up that's going to be like a more powerful shot. It's like a charge shot. You can charge up your special moves as well. And I also find one that's going to allow for take less damage. And that's going to be a huge one when you have that, because these boss fights are going to be, I'm not going to say trivial, but they're going to be a whole lot easier. Now, can you finish the game without getting all these power-ups? I presume so, but when I saw that they were missing on my character select screen here, and I knew they were in the levels, I was like, I really should go back and get them, just simply to make the rest of the game a little bit easier. And so I've collected all the power-ups. My Mega Man or Mega Man X is as powerful as I can possibly be, and I'm ready to go into the core. Now, the first level of the core, I think, is directly out of Mega Man X as far as like the outside scenery here. A little bit of a rehash of some of the enemies, and there's like a mini boss you're going to get to, which is going to be Zane, who is on the cover, who he's appeared throughout the story elements thus far, and he has this giant sword he can jump up and sort of smash down on you or attack you with, and he's a pretty tough enemy. However, I figured out like if you shoot at him, he can reflect all the shots off of his little sword, but if you use the ice move, it can ricochet off the back wall, hit him in the back, and that's really the only way I can figure out how to beat this character. Now, when you defeat him, his little sidekick, Gimmel, or Gamel, however you say his name, appears, and he tells me that I disgust him, and my response is, "Who are you?" It's like, what a great insult from Mega Man to say back to him. So he's like, putting this mean insult out there, and your best response is like, "I don't even know who you are, man." And so it's probably not meant to be taken that way, but that's at least the way I took it. And what a smart alecky Mega Man we have here. But we continue on through the level. We get to the final boss of stage 1, which is this giant spider. It almost feels like I'm playing this like Plinko game from Price is Right, because the spider will sort of come down a random pattern on the web here, and when it gets down to the bottom, you get to shoot at it, and you sort of have to try to predict which pattern the spider is going to take. And I don't know, it's just like a really fun boss battle for me. I had a really good time with it. And I will say, like, throughout this entire game, like, all the boss battles have been, like, pretty much top notch as far as, like, trying to figure out the boss patterns, you know, the boss swap up as far as, like, different stages of the boss. I mean, great boss fights in this entire game. And this giant spider is no exception. Probably one of my favorites in the game. Now, stage 2 of the course, also pretty short here, but you do have a little platform you hop on, and you sort of hop on. Every time you hop on, it changes directions. And your goal is simply to get to the top of the corridor. But you can also just simply use your wall grab and sort of make your way up the corridor as well. Now, as I'm going through it, I do find one spot where there's a ladder up above me. And I could not figure out how to get to that ladder unless you're like supposed to take the platform you're on, like from the very beginning of the stage all the way to this. And so I have no idea if I missed anything that's up the ladder or not. But regardless, I continue on to get to the boss here. And once again, a great boss, because you have these like spikes beneath you and this little robot boss here, these little glass cannons or little glass pieces. And your job is you're on these little floating platforms to blast all of those out, bust them, and then he comes out and you have to fight him on his little platform while he's shooting at you. And man, it's just a cool little level here, or cool boss battle. It's not super difficult, but it's just fun. And that's what I can say about these core bosses so far, is they're not hard, but they're just unique enough and they're just fun enough to sort of separate it from the rest of the game. And then you get to stage 3 in the core here, and this is probably the least interesting one because it simply takes that page out of every other Mega Man game, has you fight all 4 of the Robot Masters that you've already gone through, and once you fight all of them, then you get to fight against Sigma, who is the main enemy in Mega Man X. And so like how he came back for this story, I don't know. I'm sure there's some Mega Man X lore that I don't really know all about. But regardless, this boss fight here, if you just simply try to fight it, like my gosh, like he is powerful. It takes like a quarter of your health away with every single hit. But if you just simply use your wall grab and just continue jumping up in the upper left-hand corner, like he can never hit you in that corner as long as you like know when to drop down when he's going up to it, and you can just simply shoot him on your way down. A really, really easy boss fight once you understand the mechanic. Probably like one of the easiest in the game. But if you don't understand that one mechanic, like he's pretty darn tough. But after you defeat him, you're teleported then to stage 4, which would be inside Sigma's base, and you go up to Techno, who's one, you know, little computer guy who's been organizing all of this, working for Sigma, and you're getting ready to kill Techno, and then you find out that like this is actually Midi's brother, and you know Techno sort of has remorse for all that he's done, so his mind was overtaken by Sigma, and you know he didn't mean to do all these bad things, and he says like his heart is weak, and he's about to give out, he's about to die, and then when he dies, Midi reveals that his heart's connected to Techno, so now your assistant Midi dies, and so like it's a sad scene, but at the same time like it's not as heartfelt as it could be, just simply because you don't have a lot of connection to these characters, and I don't know, it's just sort of an odd scene inside the game. But then of course you try to get your vengeance, so you go fight against Sigma again, and when you go against Sigma the second time, like he's got this giant mech suit on, and if you just simply stand on like the hands and just simply shoot his head, like he's dead in like no time. And yeah, he can shoot like little lasers out of his hands, but the hand like pauses before the laser comes out, and you can hop off of it and you know jump back on it as soon as the laser is done. And man, like a really easy boss fight. And so this boss fight is probably one of the once again one of the easier ones in the game, which is odd because like all the core Mavericks or robot bosses throughout, you have to like really learn and really memorize their mechanics, and these are just like, I don't know, they're sort of trivial to a degree. But after you defeat him, you're teleported back to base, you talk to Zero, you talk about Midi's sacrifice, all of that. You say Sigma's not really gone, and we're going to continue this battle pretty much for all eternity as long as Mega Man and Zero exist. Then the credits begin to roll, and you think the game is over, but it's not over, because it unlocks Hard Mode, and Hard Mode is really just simply part 2 of the game, because it's pretty much a brand new game. Because when you go into hard mode, then you get 4 brand new Robot Masters that you have to go through. And if you really want to consider beating the game, you have to go through hard mode and defeat all of these Robot Masters and defeat Sigma again in order to consider, you know, completing the game. And yes, I know for the challenge, I could probably call it here since I got the credits to roll. But it is a Mega Man game. I enjoy Mega Man games, so we're going to go and go through the next 4 robot bosses and truly finish the game. Now, when you start up hard mode, you have to go through the same little intro level that you did for normal mode. But then when you get to the 4 stages you get to choose from, I'm not sure if these bosses are from X1 or X2, but we're just going to go through them in order here. The first one I do go into is Armored Armadillo, and it's sort of an underground cave level to a degree, and get some cool aesthetics to it. You got a little robot that sort of like, you know, digs through the dirt trying to get to you. If you just simply get behind him, you can take him out pretty quick. Also got these little trolleys you can ride on, but the trolleys, man, they go so fast. Like, I mean, you have your rapid fire on, which does help, But at the same time, they go so fast through the level, like you're almost certainly going to get hit. And so I found it easier just simply to get off the trolleys and just simply walk through the level. But eventually you're going to get to a point where if you do that, you can't make the jumps. And so you eventually have to go through the trolleys. But anyway, so the level itself is fine. It's not really a great looking level. It's pretty short. There is one scene where you can sort of look outside the cave and you see like these little waterfalls going over the side of the world here. And that's pretty cool looking, but it's a really short-lived part. And when you finally get to the armored armadillo, like the boss battle itself is pretty cool because you have to basically attack him enough to get him to shed his skin or shed his armor, and then he's really vulnerable. And I found out like the spark move works best on him, but even if you don't use the spark move, you can take him out of your Mega Buster. But getting that armor broken off of him, that's a cool mechanic. And so like the game here, the boss battles, like they really are cool. The levels themselves, a little on the short side, you know, sort of average, but the boss battle is the highlight of the game. Then I go into a Wheel Gator, and this is a really cool looking boss. Like I wish the level like matched his aesthetic, but the level itself just feels like a really generic robot or techno level. And I don't know, I really want more like alligator or crocodile aesthetic for it. And you do get that at the very, very end. You get like one little scene of the level itself having like the crocodile or alligator's head there. But outside of that, the level itself is fairly lame and really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the boss at all. There is a branching path that you can take in this level, which I think is the only level that has a branching path, but it's so short that it doesn't even like make a huge difference. There's one part where you get the mech suit again, but it lasts for like 10 seconds and you get out of the mech suit, and it's like they had ideas for the levels and they simply did not have enough I don't know, a big enough team to execute what they wanted. But the levels just feel very short or truncated for this game. But when you get to the Wheel Gator here, I'm just going to call him Gator, the Gator robot boss, when you get to him, like it's a cool looking fight. Like you get the lava down at the bottom and he sort of hides in, he can sort of pop up, he can shoot these little wheels out at you, he can shoot these little laser points out at you, he can jump up and grab you and pull you back down, sort of chomp on you. It's a really cool looking boss fight, but my lord, is it a hard boss fight to finally get through. It probably took me like 10 tries to finally get him and finish him off here, which is probably why they made the level so short in the game, because the boss fight you have to learn so much and sort of, you know, figure out all their different moves and sort of telegraph it a little bit. But that's probably why they made the level so short in the game. But you have to, you know, fight your way back to him, and he is a really difficult boss fight. But at the same time, like, even though he's difficult, like, it's fun because you actually learned how the mechanics worked. And then we head into the Magna Centipede level, and once again, it's a very stereotypical, generic-looking level, sort of lame. And there's so much they could have done with, like, the bug aesthetic or the centipede aesthetic, and it's just simply, like, all lost here. As you're going through it, they have these giant blocks that come down, try to squish you, whether falling on you or coming from left to right. And that gets sort of frustrating because it's a one-hit kill, and that's sort of hard. You also get these little, looks almost like a green Ninja Turtle boss that comes down here, and he tries to fight you, and he's really, really easy for a mini boss. And you get like a purple one, which is almost the same, really, really easy. And then you finally get to the Magna Centipede himself, and like, I don't have a clue like how this is supposed to be a hard boss fight. Like, he can grab you, and then like he just sort of drops you. You don't get any damage or anything. And unless he hits you after he drops you, you don't take any damage. And so you just simply keep shooting at him. He sort of grabs you, he lets you go, and then you keep shooting, he grabs you, he lets you go. This is the easiest boss in the game, and I can't figure out like if there was something like I'm missing in this boss fight to make it more difficult or more of a like a strategy, but I don't have a clue. This is like the easiest boss fight in the entire game. And then into the final level here, which will be Morph Moth. And this level here had an opportunity to be a really cool, like once again, insect aesthetic or something along the lines of like something in the air again. And they went with a junkyard, which it's a good looking aesthetic. It just simply doesn't match up with the boss battle at all, in my opinion. You got these like assembly lines of like these bosses or these robots being constructed out of the junkyard. It's a cool looking level. It just simply doesn't align with the theme of the moth, and really much to me. But as you're going through it, you do have a little mini boss here that you have to fight, you know, shoot in the chest. Pretty easy. You get to the boss himself, and I think the game was messing up here again, because like I think there's some like sprites missing from this battle. But if you just simply use the flame attack, which makes sense, it's a giant moth here, you use a flame against him, and you simply keep shooting him. Eventually he appears, and when he finally does appear, continue using that flame attack, and man, like he is so easy. But it was still a cool boss fight, but at the same time, if you're using the right weapon, it's a lot easier. I will say the bosses in the first half of the game were a good bit more difficult than the second half, with the exception of that stupid alligator. But now that you defeated all 4 of the main robot bosses, now you're going into the core again, and the core levels are going to be exactly the same, so I'm not going to go through like all different parts of that. The only difference is in core part 1, instead of fighting against Zane, you fight against Gimmel, and he's a cool boss. He shoots out these like little spear or little ninja stars at you, and then he can also like jump up and he like floats around like a giant kite. I don't know, it's sort of cool looking. Not really difficult, but a cool boss fight. And then when you're in stage 3 of the core, you fight against these 4 robot bosses again instead of the original 4, which, you know, was to be expected. And then you go against Sigma. You fight against Sigma again, the exact same battle, at least from my perspective anyway, as it was the first time around. Do the same strategy, and then you get the same little cutscene at the end, minus the MIDI techno part, and the credits begin to roll. And it's like, they could have given you a different ending since you beat it twice now. And after you defeat it this time, Techno appears somehow back from the dead, and he tells you that there's actually an extreme mode you can go through, but there's no new story elements or anything like that. And so at this point, I'm like, all right, so we've beaten the game, we've gone through, we've seen everything that the game has to offer, and there's no new story elements, so we're done with the game here. The credits are officially rolling, and we have finished Mega Man Xtreme. Now, how would I rank this game compared like to some of the other Mega Man games? Personally, I like the original Mega Man 1 through 5 on the Game Boy a good bit more than this particular game. And the main reason being is just simply the level design. The level design in Mega Man 1 through 5 felt like true Mega Man levels. This game, all the levels felt very, very short, and it was almost like there was sort of a preparatory area for the boss fight. The boss fights were, for the most part, pretty phenomenal. You had to learn the boss fights, you had to get the patterns down, and they were quite difficult. And that's probably the reason they made the level so short, is they knew the boss fights had to be learned so much in order to defeat them, and so they're going to make it easier for you to go through. However, a lot of the fun in Mega Man, for me anyway, is traveling through all these extensive levels and seeing all the different, you know, little enemies you're going to go against, all the little platforming elements, and so that was, for the most part, missing in this game. Every level could be taken out in like maybe a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, if that. A lot of them were like really, really short. And then the boss fight itself would take an equal amount of time just simply to learn the mechanics. And so I really was a little disappointed in the overall design of the core part of the game. And even when you go into like the Mother Spark or the Mother Core, it keeps up a very similar gameplay mechanic of very short levels, really cool bosses, even though they weren't like difficult, really cool bosses. And so I would really summarize this game like that. Amazing bosses, weak levels. Overall graphics in the game, I felt they were pretty darn good. I liked the mechanics as far as like, you know, your attackings in the game. It felt very natural. It felt like a good transition from Mega Man to Mega Man X, and a good watered down version of that, at least for gameplay mechanics. Music, okay music, nothing really stood out, nothing was bad, just simply generic Mega Man music throughout, which is a little sad because I usually love like almost all Mega Man music. I also did like the idea that throughout the game, you can go back into the level and find the Dr. Light power-ups to make the game a little bit easier, like your, you know, your chest plate or your helmet or your Mega Buster or your leg mechanics. That was a cool idea for the game, so I did like that. And so there were some cool aspects of the game, but at the same time, it just didn't really feel like a full Mega Man game to me, just simply because of how the levels were done for the overall design. But overall, I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, I do love Mega Man, so I'm probably going to say this is a solid 6. I think a 6 would summarize this game pretty well. What do you all think? Is Mega Man Xtreme one of your all-time favorite Game Boy games, one of your favorite Mega Man games? Let me know in the comments down below. Or do you hate the game? Let me know about that as well. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check my other videos listed up above. And as always, go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.